So the way what we're going to do now is as we always do, we flip it, we turn it over, and we're going to have a quick talk here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share some no-code tools. Basically what I've done is I've broken this up into two kind of sections. One is like no-code tools to kind of help you run your business. And there's a lot more in that camp. And then there's kind of the no-code tools to build your product. Before I get into this, there are way more than 80 tools. And so I know that I've missed some, right? And I have not used all of these, but I know that I've missed some. I haven't used all of them, but I've categorized them. And so as I'm going through, jot down, take some notes. If there's any ones that you think I missed, if you have any that you've used and you really like, or you're like, oh, we tried this one and this one was no good. We can use that as conversation starter when at the end. Because this is kind of a sampling of different tools. So I've definitely missed some. I know if you watched the No Code conference a couple weeks ago, Vlad said that his favorite no code tool was VoiceFlow. I did this presentation like 2 months ago. I didn't have VoiceFlow in there. So I've definitely missed some. But that being said, so take some notes so that we can talk about if you missed any of the ones that you love and I didn't talk about. But I'm going to first start, one second. I'm going to first start by so we're all on the same page with what I'm talking about as far as no code is concerned. What am I talking about when I talk about no code? So first, you probably don't need to write or know how to write code. So that's obviously, that kind of goes without saying. Let me see if okay. So sometimes the tools that we're talking about provide you the ability to customize the code. They don't have to, but sometimes you have like super settings that you can go in there and actually customize the code. Oftentimes when I'm thinking about no code tools or like legitimate viable no code tools, most of them are cloud-based. You don't need to download something on your machine. You can log in online. And so it's cloud-based. That's not true for everything. Some of these tools have desktop versions. Most of them are all cloud-based though. This is a really important one, which is interoperability. Meaning that these tools are really good at talking to each other and hooking up with each other. If a tool can't talk to other tools, I pretty much skip over it. It doesn't have much interest to me because if it's in its own sandbox, that's pretty much useless to me. So that's not true for all these no code tools that we're talking about, but most of them, the vast majority of them, can talk to each other. Another thing is that there's generally a pretty low barrier to entry, right? So there's a low cost. You can create your account on your own. There's you don't have to like call a salesperson to set up your account. So you can kind of get from start to first win in a pretty short amount of time. So that's what I'm thinking. So they're not huge learning curves where it's like you have to go through training seminars and like, so that's another thing. And then lastly, oftentimes these tools that I'm talking about have very targeted use cases. So they're not trying to do everything under the sun. They're good at this one thing. And then when they start to reach the limits of what makes sense to be in their platform, they generally pass it off using the interoperability. They pass it off to another tool. So these are kind of my criteria for no code tools. It's not always the case, but these are kind of my criteria when I'm thinking about no code tools. So here we go. 80 no code tools in 20 minutes. I haven't timed myself, but hopefully it's 20 minutes or less. So these are the categories of no code tools that we're going to talk about today. Okay. So we've got and this is more about running your business. So accounting, appointment scheduling, everything from data storage. I'll go through all these, but I've broken them up into these 3, 6, 9, 10, these like 20 categories. So here we go. Accounting tools. So these tools can talk to other tools as well. Like I said, so these kind of hit a lot of all those 5. A popular one is FreshBooks. A lot of you have heard of QuickBooks. I actually use a product called Wave. It's free, which I like. But these are all accounting tools that you can use to like create invoices, run your books, do all that. And then they also like talk, you got a new invoice that gets paid, it can trigger something in Airtable to start logging all your stuff. So there's a few accounting tools here: FreshBooks, Xero, QuickBooks, Wave. Appointment scheduling. Many people have heard of Calendly. There's a few others though. If you ever use HubSpot, HubSpot is a big tool. Maybe most of you are familiar, but it's not one of the tools that does one small thing really well. It actually does a ton of stuff, but they do have appointment scheduling in HubSpot. Acuity Schedule is actually the Squarespace product. So Squarespace has kind of built in calendar kind of appointment scheduling into their tool. It's an add-on, and then SavvyCal is one that kind of is kind of a newer version of Calendly that a lot of people like. Those can also trigger workflows. So those are cool if you do a lot of appointment scheduling. Next, we've got your software suite to just like run your business. Obviously Google and Office 365. Those are the 2 primary ones. A lot of people don't actually think of these as like no-code tools, but when you actually get down to it, they tick all the boxes of what a no-code tool is. So you can trigger emails, you can trigger calendar events, you can, save stuff to Drive, documents, all that stuff. Similarly with Office 365 Online. So they tick all the boxes of no-code tools, even though a lot of people don't really first think of these as no-code tools. Client onboarding. This is kind of a new one that I've been seeing a lot of. And it basically is, if you ever have like a process that you're like onboarding a new client and you need to collect their ClussDoc is great for this. You're onboarding a new client, you need to collect their name and their address and their logo files, and you basically want to onboard a client, and you've got these 8 things that they need to do, and they need to fill out this form and submit this thing. ClussDoc allows you to like create templates, and then you say, oh, this is my onboarding template. I'm going to send this to my new client. And then they get it, they get this invitation, and then they have to go in and do their client onboarding. So these tools all here kind of streamline the process, the processes that you have. You can like pass things off to other people on your teams to try to like just keep everything sane. Flat File on the right here. This actually is a tool. They advertise a lot on Product Hunt actually, but they are, if you are capturing data, so you have if you have a client that you need to like download a bunch of employee information or a bunch of product information, and it's like in spreadsheets everywhere, Flat File is a tool that will help you streamline that process. So you can basically consume a bunch of your client's information and insert it and map it into your tool. So that's if you're consuming a lot of data from clients, that might be something that you'd want to do. But that is a lot of client onboarding, process management, stuff like that. CRMs, customer relationship manager. We've all heard of Salesforce, I'm guessing, and HubSpot does a similar thing. 2 that are a little less well-known. Copper lives right inside of the G Suite, or Google Workspaces, I think is what it's called now. But that's a CRM that lives inside of Gmail. Pipedrive is another really popular one that's kind of for salespeople. So if you are managing customers and you don't want to do something as huge as Salesforce or HubSpot, Copper and Pipedrive are two good CRM alternatives as well. Dashboards. So now you've got all this data coming in from clients and from your website and your marketing and all this stuff. There's a couple tools that can make your data look really nice and give you a public dashboard so that either you or your team or your leadership or I guess maybe in some instances your clients or the public could see and view all that data. So dashboards, these are 3 tools that can take your data and visualize it in a really nice way and hook up to a lot of these other tools. Database and spreadsheets, we're all familiar with Excel, Google Sheets, Airtable we've been talking about today. 2 others that are quite popular are Notion and Coda. Notion is more document-based. A lot of teams use it for like wikis, like internal wikis for their companies. But I've seen a lot of stuff where people are like, you can build an app from Coda. And so it's not as much like a spreadsheet as Airtable, but it oftentimes is used in the same conversations as Airtable. Notion is. Coda, similarly as well. I played around with it once, didn't have a great use case for it. And so then I kind of dropped it. Document storage. I think we're probably familiar with most of these. OneDrive from Microsoft, Drive, Dropbox, and Box. There's probably a ton of others as well. Design. So it's Canva is kind of like the Squarespace for designers. They kind of give you the templates. And so if you are not a designer, but you are looking to make some good looking design assets, posters, flyers, banner ads, whatever, Canva is a good option. It's kind of like they try to not let you draw outside the lines. Figma and Sketch are more kind of maybe pro level. They're like a Photoshop, Illustrator, but they are also, I think Sketch might be online now. It used to be a desktop app. Figma is 100% online. These, of all the tools, the box that they don't tick is the interoperability is hard. Like it's when you can kind of do whatever you want in a design tool. It can be hard to create true interoperability, but they do in some ways. So they are starting to integrate with other tools, like Figma is starting to integrate actually with Webflow. So you can design in Figma and then take your design into Webflow. Document automation. I'm a huge FormStack Documents fan. So if you are creating documents or applications or presentations or proposals, I did a benefits booklet project where we made 50-page benefit booklets, documents, like automated. Used to take people days. Now it takes them like 60 minutes. So I'm a huge FormStack Documents fan. Docparser is a tool that can consume PDFs. So if you're always getting PDFs from clients or from vendors or whatever, and you want to and you find yourself just like opening the PDF to like take some information out and then put it somewhere else, Docparser will consume that PDF, find the information you're looking for, and then put it in a format to basically send that data on to whatever else you need, whether that's Google Sheets, Airtable, FormStack Documents. It basically can parse out data from PDFs. Templify and Documate, I haven't used those, but basically the idea is that you create templates and then you can automate the creation of your documents. I don't think they're quite as flexible as FormStack Documents, but kind of the same idea. Email marketing, there's like 1,000 more that I don't have here, but these are some big ones. So marketing email, we've got Constant Contact, Emma, MailerLite, Active Campaign. These are the ones. I think Lenker uses a different one that I can't remember the name of. But these are for marketing emails when you've got a whole list that you need to send your marketing emails to. Transactional emails, which is more when someone does something and then you want to send a one-off email. They buy something, you want to send them a receipt. They need to reset their password, or they want, transactional emails that are one-off to people. MailerSend, which is I think it's a sister company of MailerLite, and Mandrill is kind of a sister company to MailChimp. Those are 2 transactional email options as well. And then physical mail. These are kind of interesting. If you want to send flyers in the mail, like you want to actually send letters to people, you can trigger sending letters to people, whether it's like a brochure or a receipt or a welcome package, whatever you want. You can actually trigger snail mail with NoCode, with other NoCode tools. So two to look at there would be PostGrid and Lob. So they would do the printing and basically drop ship or just send your physical mail to people in an automated way. Online forms. A lot of people know about Google Forms. Jotform is a big one that's making a big push recently. Typeform is the one question after the other. So they only ask one question at a time. And then FormStack. I've done a lot with forms. Typeform, I think, is like the sexiest and it's the most fun to fill out. And if you've got 20-ish or less questions, Typeform is great. Once you start to get to like 30 questions or more, then it's annoying filling out one question at a time. So, but otherwise, I think Typeform is great. FormStack, also great, but there's a lot of clicks when you're in FormStack. So, and it doesn't look quite as sexy. So we use FormStack a lot because of the integration with FormStack documents, which is super tight, but it's not quite as sexy as the others. And then Jotform has a lot of cool widgets where you can like do interesting stuff with your forms. So it's not just like the standard inputs. So if you have a unique question type and you want to play around with doing something unique or that's maybe a little more outside the box, Jotform is probably the place to look. Human resources. If you are keeping track of your people or you're doing, I think these can do payroll. I know Wave can do payroll, but human resources, two of the popular kind of no-code tools when it comes to HR, Bamboo and Breezy. Internal communications, we probably all heard of Slack, Google Chat, and Microsoft Teams. Reason that they're on here as for no-code tools is because, again, they tick all the boxes. You can trigger notifications into Slack, Teams, and Chat, and you can use them in really effective ways in your no-code workflows. Internal documentation, you heard me talk about Notion and Coda, obviously Docs and Microsoft Word. One that I want to bring up, though, that is actually really interesting, and there's actually two, but the one I have listed here is called Tango. There's another one called Scribe. Tango is basically automates the creation of your how-to guides. So if you are ever writing documentation of like, okay, so you need to go and open up this web page, click on menu, then you're going to go in here and you're going to type in this thing. And then if you're creating how-to documentation, Tango is a game changer. What it basically does is you hit record and then you go and you do your thing. You like open up the menu and then you type in the thing and then you scroll to the next page, you hit submit. It records all that and takes screenshots as you're going. So then when you're done and you like finish that workflow, you have a how-to guide automatically built for you that has screenshots of every step of the way with page titles and all the stuff. You can edit it, but it takes what would otherwise take like an hour to create a really nice how-to guide. You can do it in like 5 minutes. So Tango is a tool that I definitely recommend if you're creating how-to guide documentation. Marketing automation platforms, HubSpot, again, Salesforce. These are huge tools that aren't ticking the does one small thing. They are kind of doing everything. But those are two marketing automation platforms that if you grow into those, they can be super powerful. I'm sure some of the digital marketers in the meetup here might have some opinions on these as well. Payments, Stripe, Venmo, PayPal, Gumroad. Stripe is a little more developer friendly, so not totally no code, but they're getting into that space. Venmo and PayPal, like you can use these to help run your business. You can use these as no code tools. They maybe don't integrate a ton with other, they don't have that interoperability, but I think they do have some. Gumroad is a platform if you are selling digital goods. So if you want to sell a poster that you created, Gumroad is a platform that focuses on helping kind of artisans, I think, sell digital goods. Project management, Trello, Monday.com, Basecamp. I'm guessing most people have heard of these, so I won't spend too much time, but they are great for task management, project management. They have some really good features. You could probably throw Airtable in here too. Airtable, a lot of people use Airtable as a project management tool. Swag. Oh, this is a cool one. Printful. If you've ever looked at like the integrations that Webflow has, you can create a Printful integration where basically you can have you could create an online store that has products and swag and never print it yourself. So you basically create all of the products online. And then if anyone goes to your store and buys it, Printful basically prints it on demand, packages it up, and drop ships it for you. So you have no overhead when it comes to creating physical printed swag. So if you wanted to create some swag and create an online store, Printful is actually a pretty interesting option because you don't have to buy a bunch of t-shirts up front and then deal with the shipping and the packaging. Printful handles all of it. Website builders, the only three that I think are probably of any, someone's probably going to be mad at me for this, but that I think are worth anything are Webflow, Squarespace, and Shopify. We all know that we love Webflow. Squarespace, I usually only recommend to people if they are going to own the website, they aren't technical, and they're going to own the website. They don't want to learn Webflow, or they don't have the propensity to learn Webflow, and they're going to want to make a lot of changes to the website. I wouldn't really make a Webflow site that someone is going to want to like add new pages and change pages and move sections around. And if they're tinkerers, then I go with Squarespace because it's easier to tinker in Squarespace, I've found, for clients who aren't technical. Shopify, Webflow's done some e-commerce stuff. I don't know if they're at the level of Shopify yet there. So if you've got an e-commerce site, I'd still probably recommend Shopify. So there is the run your business tools in the fast. Hopefully, I don't know where I'm at yet on time, but hopefully I've got a few more minutes because I want to talk about building your product. So there are more and more of app builders are coming out. I think the ones that are kind of worth looking at, Bubble and Adalo are kind of well-known names in the space. This one, Wiseit, I think is interesting. It integrates and sits right on top of Webflow. So I think that's interesting. These tools, from what I can tell, allow you, and we did a meetup on Bubble a few months back, and I actually was not like that. After seeing it, I was like, I hope I never have to use Bubble. It just looked really convoluted. So that's why I'm like, I hope Wiseit can be that. But these are tools that I think allow you to customize the UI enough that it can feel more branded. There are a lot of other tools that I haven't included here. Chris and I were talking about a lot of them that basically are like, take your Google Sheet and we'll make it into an app, or take your Airtable and we'll make it an app. And I think those are great for MVPs or minimum viable products or proof of concepts. They do that thing well where they actually, they take your data and they turn it into an app, and that's great. I think as far as like building your full product, you'll probably hit a point where you're like, I want this to look different. I want this to behave slightly different. And I don't think some of those like sheet to app tools make that easy. And so, or allow you to do that. So I haven't included them here, but there are a lot others. If you just want like a minimum viable product or a proof of concept that can do that, if you have the data on stored somewhere. Memberships. Another one that's probably with Webflow doing Logic now coming out next year. You could probably throw Webflow in here as well, depending on what you're looking for, because they allow for Logic and memberships, which is the next slide. So memberships is a big thing. if you wanted to have like a paid content or gated content. Webflow is now going to be a part of this, but MemberStack, MemberSpace, Squarespace, I've never used Outseta, but I've heard people love it. And so those are tools that allow you to create gated content and kind of paid content. So lastly, we've got one last slide. You got all these tools that are out there. How do you hook them up? And the last no-code tools are connecting your tools. And those, the most popular ones are Zapier, Integromat, and Parabola. These are the tools. These are the pipes that connect all of the tools. Zapier is really great for like the one-off, you know, like something happens, I'm going to do something else. They did just release a few weeks, a month or two ago, the ability to batch do your processes. So it's not just a one-off. You can do it. They've got a name for it. I can't remember, but you can like batch, do a bunch of processes at once. Otherwise, Parabola and Integromat that I don't have as much experience with, they're better at doing those big batch processes. They're maybe a little more advanced. Like you're not maybe going to go in there and just do a quick thing. But those are how you're going to connect all of your tools together, all of the tools that I've just talked about. And the last thing that I'd say is that when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And so you think that I've got all these great tools and I'm just going to automate everything and I'm just going to do, but in the end, no code tools should actually make your life easier. And oftentimes if we add too many tools, I've talked about 80 tools or 80 more, maybe more than 80 tools. If you try to get a tool for everything, it's going to slow you down. You're going to end up, you're going to spend all your time managing your tools. So pick your spots that you want to automate, identify your pain point, and then find the tools to fix that or to help alleviate that. Don't necessarily, since you've got 80 tools, it doesn't mean you need to use, 30 of them. Just, kind of pick your targets and then figure out a way to make your life easier and then add layers to the onion as you go forward. Whoo! Oh, yeah. So I think that's it. We did it.
You sure? You sure you don't have another full of slides?
Oh. How do we do?
Pretty on point.
Was it 20 minutes?
Yeah, I think so, actually. Not that it matters at all.
You could go against Eminem,
What's that?
You could go against Eminem for this. Like,
Yeah.
That was pretty amazing that how you covered everything within what? 20,
well, thank you. What did minutes? I'm curious. What did I miss? Who wrote down one that were like, you didn't talk about, I didn't talk about voice flow. What are the tools that that you love that I didn't talk about?
ClickUp.
What is ClickUp?
Slack.
ClickUp is a project management. It's kind of like Notion, basically. The only three I use are Webflow, ClickUp, and Airtable. And ClickUp is just how I manage all my client projects and communicate and upload files and all that stuff.
Oh, I didn't realize it was project management. I've always heard of ClickUp being something that people use instead of Slack. So like in that context. But
yeah,
I know it's up and coming.
How I use it
People
as well,
seem to use
but...
it. Yeah,
I've been using ClickUp for about 2 years, and they're constantly rolling out new. It's kind of, sometimes it gets to the point where like, really, do we need another tool in ClickUp? But they just rolled out whiteboards, so it's had me where I've got fewer tabs open, so I don't need Miro. I've got whiteboards in ClickUp. I don't need some of the scheduling and some of the other tools that we were talking about because they're all in ClickUp. So it's not just a project management. It can also be a little bit of a CRM. You can set up CRM flows, and you can do time tracking. So I don't have to have a time tracking tool anymore. Trying to think of all the other stuff. It does quite a few things. It's got like onboarding flows. You can add client portals. There's a lot of things you can do besides. It started off just being a basic PM tool, but it's really grown in the last year. And they just had like another round of investments that they announced like in October. So I use that.
Is that intimidating? Like I think about that. I'm like, wait, hold on. So now I've got to replace this and I got to replace that. And then I replace, or do you guys not see it that way? Like,
well, go ahead, Kyle. I mean,
did you approach it in a way that you were like, this is, they're on their homepage right here, one app to replace them all. I'm thinking like, I don't want to put all my eggs in that basket. And that seems like a lot to learn, but maybe it's super easy and it's great and it's better. I don't know.
well, they've got a free tier that kind of gets you in. I was on the free tier for about 9 months, and then I'm like, I'm going to pay for this tool. There's so many cool things I can do with it. And paying, you can add more clients and collaborators. Plus, it opens up a bunch of extra widgets and things like that automates a bunch of stuff. So at the free tier level, you've got some automation, but if you pay for the basic business plan, or they've got like 3 different tiers, I think, and it's only like $5 a month for the basic plan. And it opens up a whole bunch of automation widgets. So it's actually saved me a bunch of money. I think I saved like $60 closing off some of the other plan things. So it is a little bit intimidating at this point. When I started working with it 2 years ago, there was fewer applications and fewer functions that you could use. And I basically just had my business, and then I had a personal board. So I had a Kanban board and a calendar, and I had like an agile workflow that I put in, and that's basically what I was doing. And then like every 2 months they add on like a new thing that's like, oh, so you have to learn it. So at this point, yeah, jumping into it now, it would probably take a little while, but probably not any more than learning Hello Bonsai or HubSpot or something like that.
God, I love hearing these tools that I've never heard. Hello Bonsai.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's like Wave. Probably.
Yeah, I think the way I approached it was like, to your point, to the end of that talk, of the less tools, the better for me. And so if I felt like that tool in itself, kind of like Notion, just had so much capability that I didn't need a lot of other tools. I could just kind of really lean on that one. It kind of covered all my bases. But I guess
Sell
it
us
just
on
depends
Notion.
the person.
I'm not as familiar with sell us on Notion. Like what
I don't use it, but it's, from my understanding, it's very similar to ClickUp. Honestly, I think they're pretty intense competitors. They both offer just really robust like project management and communication, and projects, like you can upload a lot of content to them. And I've never actually personally used it, but my understanding is it's like the main competitor to ClickUp.
Yeah, Kyle, I posted, two on the chat, on Cork. I don't know if you're familiar with on Cork, or anybody here. I recently attended a virtual.
Yeah.
Virtual, and even Stripe, even Stripe uses, Cork in the back end, I think. So it's something that I'm super interested in. And Didify, actually, there's even a relationship there with Didify. I don't know if you looked at it. It allows for even building, like fintech products and other types of software applications. So I dropped them in the chat.
Yeah.
And the next thing is, quick question, does WP and Elementor qualify as a no-code technology tech app as well, or not?
I mean, I think Elementor is kind of a competitor to Web. They're basically trying to be Webflow in WordPress, and so I would kind of say that probably. I mean, there's going to be a learning curve there, just like there's probably a learning curve there is a learning curve with Webflow. But I would think, I don't think you're writing code with Elementor.
No, but not necessarily. I think it's more of a visual, programming, right? It's more of a drag and drop, I think. It's best used when you're using WordPress.
Yeah.
So it is a tool that I feel it's pretty effective if you're using it, if you're building a WordPress, a website for it.
Yeah, I think if you're on WordPress, I talked to a friend of mine who's a WordPress developer, and he's tried Elementor, and he was like, "This is great, I love it." And I look at it and I go, "You're just using a tool that's not as good as Webflow." that's like,
Kyle,
but if you're on WordPress, I get why you'd want to use it.
but I have seen something very, while using Elementor in WordPress, the page loading speed decreases tremendously. So yeah, so personally, because of that, I don't recommend Elementor. Because it calls out every aspect of the classes and the theme along with the loading. So, especially when it comes to the search engine optimization and the Google standards, we need very good page loading speed for every pages. So yeah, that's a kind of drawback, I would say, for Elementor. And another good no-code system is, have you used Monday.com?
Yeah, I've never used it, but I've seen their ads. They've spent a lot of money advertising to me.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
I feel very
used
targeted by
Monday.com.
Monday.
Yeah. Have you used it,
Monday's
Joseph?
pretty okay tool. I mean, I'm using Monday.com for some of my CRM and the project management, but it's not very, too much into anything. I mean, you can just do the peripheral activities of every different tools that is needed for to run the business, like project management, CRM, or like that. Everything would be there. So in that sense, it's okay tool, but it doesn't give any very exclusive, very in-depth of features of every requirement that we may need. And another database no-code system is Xano. If you have used Xano, is a no-code database where you can create tables and using without codes and stuff like that. So it's an emerging one. Xano.com. It's a pretty nice tool.
Kyle's making notes so that next month we can come to the meeting. It'll be 150 no-code tools in 20 minutes.
Yeah, it should be.
60 that I missed. Yeah.
Yeah, the other tool that's sort of a visual builder that you can use it with WordPress. You can also build static websites with it. So it's got like a little overlap with Elementor and with Webflow. It's called Pinegrow.
Pinegrow.
So
Yeah.
Pinegrow, you can use it as a visual builder. You can also use it. It also has a coding interface, kind of like VS Code. So you can hand code to add extra functionality to it. And you can use it as a visual builder. It's a little bit more complicated to use in Webflow, but like I said, you can deploy it straight to WordPress with, it's got a little plugin, so you can deploy all your code straight to WordPress. You can use it on a static website. It uses Bootstrap and Tailwind CSS libraries. So you've got all those elements that are in Bootstrap you can use natively. So, I mean, when I first started using Webflow, I was trying to build some of those elements into a design system in Webflow on my own, sort of a UX, UI library, but that's already built in natively to Pinegrow. You have to add like third-party JavaScript, like GreenSock or something else to get all the interactions and animations. Or I think they have got a plugin now to sort of extend it so you can add the that natively, but it's not built in like Webflow. You have to either have a separate plugin or add your own JavaScript libraries.
Yeah.
So if I were to ask a question, why would you go to the bother of visually, part coding, part visually programming your site in something like Pinegrow and then move it to WordPress? Would it just be for what, like the CMS capabilities? What's the logic behind that?
It would be for the database, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or for
Okay.
WooCommerce, yeah, either WooCommerce or the database of the CMS, yeah.
WooCommerce,
but you can-
is it something that only WordPress accommodates WooCommerce?
WooCommerce is only works with WordPress. Now Pinegrow, you can use you could use Craft CMS, you could use Netlify, you could use any CMS to bind it together. So and it does work similarly to Webflow. I've looked at it. I've never actually used it. But the other thing that it has, it's got a cloud base. It also has a desktop version. So I've recommended it a couple of times. I know Eric's here. I've recommended it a couple of times to people in Africa. I've worked with a couple workshops with folks in Nigeria, in Wari and in Port Harcourt. And sometimes they would complain about Webflow because of the internet connection and not being able to work offline. And I recommended Pinegrow to them. And I know that the developers are Indian, but I don't know too much about them other than that. Like a lot of WordPress developers are for themes and things like that are Indian. So I think they're based in Bangalore, but I'm not 100% sure about that. But they do have a desktop version, so sometimes I recommend that. And it's not overly expensive. You don't have to pay like a monthly subscription like you do with Webflow. You can buy the application.
Has anyone used Intercom or Drift on their websites?
I have integrated Intercom for a couple of my clients, but it was just a direct integrations. I haven't used the tool. I just integrated it to their website.
What's the category?
You know, the little bubble in the lower right hand corner of a lot of websites that's like
Like live chat type function.
Intercom, Drift. I think HubSpot's there's a lot of tools now that allow you to do that. Intercom was kind of the first big one.
Yeah, I know Intercom and Drift both add like a huge lag time to your page loading speed. If you don't do something to have it load later, like if you don't put a delay into it where it loads like 5 to 10 seconds after the rest of your website, if you've got it in your head code, your page speed results are going to drop from like 85 to 90 to like 15 or 20. It's like a huge load on both of those. I don't know if some of the other ones are lighter. I think some of the ones that are Facebook Messenger based aren't. I had a cousin that was upper level management at Drift for a while, and he moved on to other things recently. But I mentioned that to him a couple of times, and he just kind of shook his head that like they're doing it wrong. They need to delay it. But yeah, I've noticed. I've looked at a couple of websites on Webflow and on WordPress. What they were using Intercom, and one was using Drift, but most of them were using Intercom. And yeah, the page speed was a huge suck, like 3 or 4 seconds to load.
How about landing page builders? That was something I didn't really talk about. There's like a Unbounce, lead pages. There's a few landing page builders. Curious if anyone uses dedicated landing page builders or if they do all their stuff in like in Webflow, just natively in Webflow.
I have used Unbounce. So, but it has a lot of other features, but when you think about creating landing pages, I would suggest Webflow directly, because it has, Unbounce has very limited, capability to customize the pages. Creating it in Webflow is much more easier, but maintaining, if you have a lot of landing pages, let's say, or if you want to do a lot of A/B testing, then Webflow is not a good choice. Then of course we need tools like Unbounce to categorize and A/B test the variations, for bigger campaigns. So I would suggest then Unbounce itself. And the other one is HubSpot, of course. So yeah, Unbounce is one of the very nice landing page if you have larger campaigns.
Yeah, and MailChimp and HubSpot both have landing page functionalities now too. I don't know. But again, if you're doing A/B testing, you need something like Optimizely or Hotjar or something else added to it. And you can use both of those with Webflow to do A/B testing. I've only got 4 landing pages that I use. So I've used Optimizely rather than Hotjar, but I've worked on a couple of projects where we added Hotjar tags.
I think Full Support is a very good tool for A/B testing. I have used Full Support.
Full or Fool?
Full, F-U-L-L, Full. Full Story.
It's Full Story.
Yeah. So I have used that for some of the campaigns that we are running. So it's a pretty good, cool tool,
Obviously, there is Wix.com as well. So I don't know if that comes under simple.
I tried Wix once. Were you on when we talked about that, Mohammed? Someone had a Wix site that I had to like edit. God, that was a nightmare. It was like, what is going on? Like, it just made no sense. Sorry if there's any Wix lovers out there. I was scratching my head. I was like, what is going on with this site?
I mean, that's the reason I moved to Webflow, but still.
Yeah. Yeah, you're like,
you're about to say that's the reason I moved to India.
As far away from Wix as I could.
Yeah, I've got to say, extending anything in Shopify takes like a lot of custom code going into the liquid templates, and it's kind of a pain. Just adding like 2 or 3 columns that are responsive is a huge pain in Shopify.
I despise Shopify. Shopify it really plays with my emotions because the e-commerce capabilities are just so powerful and wonderful. And then everything related to the build and design of the website is just a horrific nightmare. I don't know. So
Tell me more. I've never built a Shopify. I always think like, oh, it's Shopify. You know, I've done Squarespace, I've done Wix, I've done
what we inherited a client site that we now manage that's entirely built in Shopify, and they have a really strong e-commerce presence. And it's been a really tough transition because they like in terms of like adding products and editing products and kind of being able to sort of change all the data around how they're sold and everything around that and how they're displayed. It's like so easy. And then everything's like set up on the back end to make the transactions really fluid too. But then, you know, in terms of actually changing the style of the pages, if you wanted to make it look different from the template, it's like a headache. So it's been like, I don't know. Yeah, like I said, I'm hugely impressed by the e-commerce capabilities, and the Shopify analytics are also like badass. Like they have everything. Like you go into the analytics section and they are showing you everything that is happening on your site from an analytical standpoint in terms of where people are coming from, what the averages are in sales and conversion across products, across countries. I mean, it's like really powerful. But again, you can't restyle the page without spending a horrendously difficult few days on it and hoping for the best. I deleted a page by accident. It was the worst day ever. And I had to go to Dustin. He's a regular that couldn't make it today. I was like, Dustin, I've deleted one of their pages and I don't know what to do. And then all I did was change the title to something else. All I did was go in and change. I swear that's all I did. And then I went on the site and I was like, I had a full-on panic, and Dustin had to go into Wayback Machine to retrieve the code and manually get this page up because we couldn't figure out what was going on. And since then, I have stayed way out of everything.
Wow.
And I am not technically uninclined. Like I'm here because I do a lot of Webflow. Like this should have been okay.
Yeah, it pulls a lot of different, it does like a lot of dynamics things. So it's pulling in different sections from different templates to build the page. So yeah, if you screw up one little thing, you can break the whole template. So you probably didn't erase the page, but you broke the template, bringing in everything else. And if the first part of it in the tree gets broken, none of the other stuff shows up either. It's not just that one section that doesn't show up. It's like everything. But as long as we're talking about, I was just going to say, as long as we're talking about e-commerce, has anybody used Foxy or has anybody used the Stripe portal? I know we were talking about Stripe having new
I have
functionality for
I have used Stripe.
e-commerce. Oh, good. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, just an add-on point to Shopify. I have, you know, in my opinion, Shopify is the best e-commerce engine that's so far available. You can customize Shopify for any type of e-commerce store, but the front end is, as she said, you cannot rely on it, but the engine is so powerful. You can customize any type of business. You can do any level of customization because it's not just the direct transactions like BigCommerce, or maybe with Webflow has a very amateur kind of an e-commerce facility, but WooCommerce or BigCommerce has much better. But Shopify is way much more expanded with, you know, possibilities and facilities. You know, it can handle any type of, you know, e-commerce engine that you want to design. So in that area, I would say there is no replacement tool. I haven't seen anything.
Can you use Shopify for brick and mortar?
Come again?
Can you use Shopify for brick and mortar stores? So like, you know, to check out right there, or is it all e-commerce?
I wouldn't prefer, but you can integrate it with some tools so that you have a common inventory. That's possible. But for an exclusive brick and mortar, I haven't done anything. And I think it's not a great tool in that case. But it's very good if you have different type of, because I have a client once which was handling vinyls. So vinyl cleaning is what he has done. So it's in, you know, logistics is completely different because he has to send the pack vinyl packages for the client in order to send the vinyls. So it has a multiple hopes of transactions and shipments. All these were handled by Shopify. But when I was doing the research, I couldn't find any other tool which could handle 3 to 4 levels of logistics handling within an e-commerce store.
I really hope Webflow and Shopify have a baby or someday. They that could be
Yeah, the
really cool to
analytics
use.
that Rachel was mentioning is probably the biggest downfall for me with Webflow's e-commerce. They just don't have the analytics and a lot of the other tracking and just being able to do the variants on different products is just really difficult. And I haven't. I know some people have built Webflow front ends and Shopify back ends. I haven't worked on any project that tried to do that. They've all been native Shopify, but I've heard lots of horror stories about trying to convert Webflow, even using the Udesly plugin to Shopify. Like, I guess it's simpler if you use Shopify as your backend and your Webflow as your front end, but trying to convert Webflow templates into Shopify templates can take weeks.
When you say Shopify backend, you just mean that I've got a few pages that aren't selling anything, and then when it comes to selling stuff, then I switch over to my Shopify store.
Right.
Yeah.
Which can hurt your SEO. It can confuse people. Like, wait, I had a Webflow and now I've got a subdomain. Like, you might have myshop.com on Webflow, and all of a sudden it's myshop.com, shopify.com kind of thing, or that you got some sort of subdomain working.
Shop.myshop.com.
Yeah, exactly. And Shopify is terrible with reconfiguring the URLs for SEO.
But in case of SEO, integrating Webflow and Shopify, definitely it can hurt, but there is an important thing also which we can do. You can just rely on Shopify for just the cart functionality, so which usually we don't consider for the SEO purpose. So all other pages can be done in Webflow. In that case, in that pattern, probably we can save a lot of SEO stuff. But again, it can confuse people. People can lose trust, saying that, hey, now I'm moving to something else. Somebody else is taking my money or not. I mean, so they can have confusions and stuff like that. I have done projects in both ways, just in Webflow and integrating Webflow and Shopify. Just in e-commerce and Webflow, it's very simple. It's very amateur. You can say that if you want to sell a couple of t-shirts, that's enough. You don't have to think about a lot of machines or anything like that. You can just simply integrate with Stripe or PayPal, and people can come and buy it without even creating an account. So that's a very simple, straightforward process. But I believe that kind of an e-commerce store also is needed. For example, if you think about Facebook Marketplace, so there are people who just sell it in Facebook Marketplace with a buying cart option, right? So just think about in that scenario, I would say Webflow is okay in a very, very, very starting point. But on a long term, or if you want to have a data collections or a lot of analytics to track and ads and to gain trust of the customers, then it's not a great platform.
Wondering if any one of you have tried, familiar with the Unify that I just shared, Unify.com.
Let me see.
No, I've not heard of it.
Which one?
Unify, I just shared. Let me.
Oh, Diddofy. Yeah, I got that up. I haven't seen that before.
Yeah. Do I have to type it again, or you just?
No, I got it. It was just up a little further than. Yep.
Okay.
No, I hadn't seen that.
I haven't heard of that either.
So and we have we currently have a partnership with them for the 3.5 training of the 3.5 million Africans in that NoCode technology. And with Webflow, that was the first option. And I even tried, the first site we had was we built it on Webflow, but the issue is we could not establish some kind of direct contact with Webflow to allow see how we can have them be involved in those in that initiative. So and somehow, the universe, brought Unify, and then, we saw what they had was pretty impressive. But I think, you could, kind of check them out and see what they.
Yeah, I'll take a peek.
Mm.
I'm curious. We've talked about all these apps, right? To use this, I use that, blah, blah, blah. I'm curious, how often are people actually hooking them up and creating workflows versus just using them standalone, right? We always talk about like, oh, and then I can hook this up to then do this thing that automates this, and then I keep track of the thing, and then I let the other person know. And like, do people actually do that, or is it very rare that we're actually setting up big workflows like that? Maybe we're setting up like one connection, but is it rare, or do people do that more than I do?
I think it's quite hard to apply those principles to yourself and your own process, because like as a marketing agency, Lenker offers that as a service. So we will analyze their workflow and create recommended automated flows where we kind of do exactly what you mentioned before and identify the pain points and kind of think about what might make things move more quickly or more efficiently for people, and try and digitalize things that might benefit from kind of not being a phone call for someone like 3 times a day. But it's like, I don't think I've ever thought about it in a personal company context. It just doesn't come up. Like, you kind of just figure things out and get through the next thing and then move on. So it's much easier, I think, to do it on a consulting level where you're kind of talking to someone and asking them what they do and then building that kind of vision out for them.
Yeah.
So that's my take on it. But yeah, no, we've never had like a flow conversation internally. Although I'm sure John would love to.
I like my role in my day job is to kind of be an internal consultant for our whole company. So people come, they come to me and they're like, hey, we're having this problem. And then I work through their process. And then I'm like, oh, well, we could build this thing and then that'll automate the deal. And so I will build it for other people and other departments in our company. But you're absolutely right. Like, when it comes to my workflow, I'm not building it's not like I'm, for my consultancy where I build websites, I'm not actually, like rolling out I'm impressed that these people are using ClickUp, right? I'm not rolling out these automations where I like store, like, it's just me. So I'm kind of, I agree with you, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think it's like there's a weird holistic process to it that it's a bit like, I don't know, when you're giving your friend advice, and then if someone gave you the same advice, you'd be like, whatever, but like, you don't know what you're talking about, but sometimes you need to kind of have that outside perspective to effectively troubleshoot. Yeah. So I'll analyze your workflow, Kyle.
Check it out and let me know how I can fix it. Joy's in the house.
Joy.
Joy, you're coming in right at the end, but we're glad to see you.
Sorry. I'm so sorry. I was out with family, but I had to hop in at the end. Sorry.
I know. How dare you? That's fine. Don't worry.
We're glad you made it for as much as you can.
Awesome.
Cool.
We've just been talking no-code tools and kind of tools we use to the one in hearing Joy's talk that and thinking back on it, the tool that she used quite a bit that I don't think was actually in mine was Markup. Markup is a great tool that Joy leverages to.
I was thinking about Markup because we use it in-house now so much too. And I thought to myself, actually, Kyle wouldn't rate it as a no-code tool because it's not very easily integrated or at least it's a standalone thing that isn't necessarily part of any flow. There isn't something that comes before and after, you know, in terms of that, in that particular context.
Yeah, so it doesn't tick that box, but there were a lot of tools that didn't tick every box, you know, that,
Oh, I thought they were official criteria.
well, they kind of were, but if you like think about like, you know, one of the criteria was that it does one thing really well. Well, like ClickUp, I guess ClickUp wasn't in there, but like HubSpot, Salesforce, you know, these are huge tools that do 50 things pretty
Mhm.
well. Webflow does a lot of things really well. And so that doesn't necessarily, like some of these tools don't, you know, that's one example of tools not ticking every box. And so Figma, Sketch, Canva, they don't really integrate with other tools all that well. Tango, which I talked about, doesn't really talk, you know. So I think Markup could definitely be a part of it
Mhm.
in the conversation. I just forgot about it. But
Well, I wonder what category it would come under as well.
I'd probably put it under design,
Okay.
but
Or
it's
like project or customer communication or team communication. I don't know.
oh yeah, I guess it could be on like yeah, we did have project management, we did have internal communication, we called it, but or I call it. I
It's
mean,
like it's like a super light version of ClickUp because ClickUp has all the project management tools that you would need, and Markup is just free, which is amazing. I don't know. So it's like this very, very light version.
do you use ClickUp, Joy?
I have used ClickUp. I've used just with like different customers, like whatever they want to use, they'll show me their boards and their like reports and stuff, especially if they're like working with other teams. So I've played with a bunch of them, probably like you guys have, and they kind of function similarly. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's good.
Oh, I'm feeling like I got to give ClickUp a little try here.
Well, FinSuite use ClickUp, I believe. So
If it's good enough for FinSuite, it's good enough
if
for
it's
me.
good enough for FinSuite, we're all fine. Yeah, I'm actually pretty sure that that's where I heard about it in one of their streams. They were talking about using ClickUp because they were talking about like the different channels of communication they use, like with clients versus internal channels. And I don't know. So they were saying don't use anything Slack like or ClickUp like with clients because it's just too much to have them too close. too easy to hit you up on a short term and then wait for an answer immediately. But I actually don't know anything about it. I don't know anything about it. So it's interesting to hear they got that big influx of funding.
Interesting. Yeah, they've got a thing here. So views replaces Monday, Jira, Trello. Goals replaces Lattice, GTM Hub, and Geese. I've never heard of any of those. Lattice, chat, yep, and then project. Yeah, I didn't have Asana on there. What was the email one that the email tool that you use?
Were you going to say Rachel or somebody
Yeah.
else? I was just about to answer on their behalf anyway. Yeah, no, we actually do use ActiveCampaign. We use ActiveCampaign. We previously started trying to use SharpSpring, and it's terrible, and nobody should use SharpSpring.
Can I ask about
same here.
Active Campaign? So because I tried to integrate Active Campaigns, one of their like funnels onto a Webflow, and it was it didn't scale to like a pop-up modal, like, and we contacted support and everything, like it wouldn't like form. Have you had any issues with Active Campaign?
I really like ActiveCampaign, but we've been using it almost exclusively for email outreach and like subscription lists. So I don't know whether I've like had an experience like what you're talking about. It's a shame, you know, the last couple of sessions we've had someone called Rashad who's local attend, and he's a front-end developer for ActiveCampaign. So I wish he was here. But we can like store these questions up and then bombard him the next time he attends. I really think that we should.
I would love that.
Had a good experience.
One of my customers, we did this whole thing where we put a lead capture on her footer, and it like would not look good at all. Like the rest of her site looked really good, and then because it was all Webflow, and then we got to the active campaign, and it was like super clunky. And then we did a pop-up modal, which the base of the pop-up modal was all built in Webflow, and then just the face of it was active campaign. And then the only thing we had in Markup to clean up was the active campaign was not scaling for mobile, and we were like, crap. So I don't know, that was I have a like vendetta against active campaign after that, but that's my only thing.
From an email perspective, I mean, I know that when we were using SharpSpring, the emails were very, very beautiful and very responsive. And the one disclaimer from moving sort of back into active campaign was that that wasn't a thing. I think that they could probably raise their game by thinking a little bit more, putting a bit more love and attention into the visual and design aspects of what it is that gets like created in the system and displayed from the system. Because it sounds like that's like a problem that crops up, but functionally it's been pretty on top of things.
It does seem like they have a good amount of functions. They seem like they have good support too. So I was hopeful.
Are you talking about like a form with input fields that look terrible?
Yeah, so like the forms would change quite a bit. Like so I took their form and I embedded it into an embed code into the footer and like styled it all, but it wouldn't, well, that was one, and it looked a little funky because you couldn't change the fonts and things like that. I think there's custom code that you can do, and I'm definitely not as equipped as some.
Well,
that was a challenge, but definitely, yeah, I put it in a pop-up modal that I had created. And for some reason it just like wouldn't compress, but I don't know. I'll show you guys offline.
Yeah, because actually this brings to mind another no-code tool that should probably be on the list just because we use it all the time, which is ConvertFlow, which is specifically for form building and form integration. And that is one that they specialize in just like building forms that you can then embed the code into sites. And then they have like a strong analytics perspective to it. So you can like kind of tie it into lots of things like CoreRail, just to like get general analytics of like who's looking at the form and how long they're staying there. So that's like kind of interesting. And then what we do is we embed the ConvertFlow code on Webflow, and then we hook up ActiveCampaign to ConvertFlow. So the data is going into ActiveCampaign, but it's not part of the visual, like it's not interfering on anything on a visual basis.
So,
Sorry, what's the name again for that?
ConvertFlow.
ConvertFlow.
Okay.
Why would you do that instead of just building it in? Oh, there's probably some logic or something that's there. Like I was gonna say, why don't you just build it in Webflow? But I bet if they X out, then it's got some smarts that it's only going to show on certain pages after a certain amount of time and all that.
You can also, I think the biggest thing with ConvertFlow is that you can have multiple slides to the form. So you can have like a yes, no question that someone answers and then go to click next and have the next slide of the form. So a lot of the time with ConvertFlow, we have name and email in the first slide, because when you click next, you save that information, it goes into the system. You don't lose it, even if they don't fill out the next form. So you can have like a questionnaire where you've got a few things, and if people can't be bothered getting all the way through, you've still got them as subscribers. Like they just have like, it's specialized around forms. So they have more like powerful capabilities in that respect to kind of work with things like that. So that's the biggest argument I've heard like for using it, because Webflow doesn't accommodate for that right now.
What does Lenker use for design?
Adobe XD.
I'm sure it's fine. You just should be using Figma.
We did use Figma, and then the art director kind of moved it to Adobe XD for some reason.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you move from Figma to XD. People do the opposite usually.
Is anyone using Marvel?
Why have I, is that like Zeppelin?
It's you can design it like XD or Figma, and it's not that complicated as XD, but it's like Figma. You can use it. It's a pretty nice tool.
Yeah, even InVision app is more like
Yeah,
deliverable.
yeah, we use InVision app too.
Yeah,
You can also design, prototype,
Sketch.
and deliver.
Yeah, there is another one. Sketch is there. Sketch is pretty good.
Does Sketch have real-time collaboration yet?
Yeah, I think so.
They have actually. They just introduced it, I think, a few months back.
Okay.
A long time awaited feature, but yeah, they have finally introduced it.
You know, Marvel picked a tough name to compete with on an SEO standpoint.
Yeah, that's true.
Thank God they changed the logo at least. I mean, it would have been if it would have been similar.
Yeah, was it?
But
Was it similar?
No, it's not.
Oh, I was
I
like,
was like, yeah, that's like a few situation, but
and the new logo is tough to read. You don't understand. It's Marvel at the one shot.
yeah,
I think they might have done it intentionally.
that could be it too. Yeah. Wow. I love talking about this stuff, and all I ever think about when we're talking about it is like, God, I want to use that, and I want to use that, and then I want to use that. And then I don't take my own advice of like, don't use so many tools.
yeah, even I prefer using one tool that can do a lot of things than using a lot of tools to do individual tasks, because it's so hard to organize everything. And it's just
I
difficult.
think I like to think some of the Webflow updates coming that were announced at NoCode is going to render some of these things obsolete. ConvertFlow is one of them, because if they get the logic down and then they get the email, like, I don't know, there was something when they were introducing something to do with like logic and forms, Dustin was like, oh, bye ConvertFlow. So I don't know, like it must have. And I think as well, like, was it you, Kyle, that said like, oh, member stack's in trouble, or somebody else commented that in the feed, like because of the new login stuff. So if they do that effectively and they do it well, they might cut out some of these middlemen.
Well, the other thing that, yeah, there's going to be some of these smaller tools that are going to probably have a tougher go, like member stacks. All of member stacks customers aren't only Webflow sites, right? Like they could be integrated with a ton of different sites. So a lot of it, well, they might see a dip, but they've still got other customers. The interesting one is e-commerce, because, and something that I hadn't totally thought about until a couple months ago when someone mentioned it, was like in Webflow, if someone buys something off of your site, there's no way for them to come back and like see their account page or like see their order history, like, because there was no concept of like login.
There's no user module.
Yeah. And so now that they have memberships and users, and like, I think it'll be interesting to see if they keep investing in e-commerce, or if e-commerce is kind of just this like side project that they do a little bit with.
I think Webflow is not concentrating a lot on e-commerce, but that's the reason they didn't introduce this user module. It's no one can track it. So nowadays people are using Webflow for a lot of other, logical things and integrations. In that scenario, you need a user module. I think it would be quite hard on member stack, because probably 70% of the users who need a user login is using member stack for Webflow.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
But it's not complete, because that member login, you don't get anything out of that. So I don't know why we need that, unless we are not backed by another system like maybe Airtable or a Xano or Softer. Yeah, in between, have anyone use Softer.io? Softer is another application.
God, my tabs are growing and I love it. Softer.
Yeah, and as Rachel says, we have
one.
to go with 120 no-code tools in the next meeting.
I know, right?
I think it's more than 120. You can easily count it to 200, maybe, probably.
Oh, you know why I looked at Softer was because so Chris, who left, he had a I can't remember what he had originally built it in, but he had a little app that just basically had a bunch of companies in it. Yeah, it was a spreadsheet effectively that had companies that were competitors in this space. And he wanted to build an app, like a front end interface to view the data. And so I was with him, I was looking at all these different, like, turn your data into an app. And that's kind of what I was talking about, is this, like, there's a lot of tools that just take your Airtable and turn it into an app. Softer looks like this way. The easiest way to build from Airtable in minutes, right? No code required. So you can basically take your Airtable data and then turn it into an app. And so that's why I looked at Softer. The thing that I couldn't figure out though is, like, with so many of these app builder tools, you can't really customize the look. That's where Webflow shines, and Webflow I think can take out these other tools because they, at the end of the day, have the best interface designer. They can allow people to create whatever branded stuff they want. And that is like the golden nugget, if that's a thing.
Well, I don't know if you can hear me.
Oh yeah, much better.
Oh, good. It's because I switched over to our internet, our regular Wi-Fi. Softer is great if somebody needs a site that, they don't want to spend an awful lot of money, but it's very data driven, right? So I was thinking about using it for a local used car sales place, where they just have inventory. They need to be able to show it and to mark things as sold or available, and they weren't going to do an awful lot else. And, it's like, if the needs are simple, then it's a great way to build a site quickly.
How much customization can you do?
You can there's I haven't done a whole lot with it. You can certainly do colors and fonts and a certain amount of styling. They have a number of different sort of pre-made blocks, so you can't get into the code really and mess around with it, but you can make it look the way you want within the templates that they give you. So again, it's like you're not trying to necessarily build a Webflow comparable site. You're trying to build something simple and quick for somebody who doesn't need the whole branding and totally custom side of things.
Yeah.
See, in an app perspective, I think Xano and Webflow is a very good combination, because you can scale the database, you can scale the product to a different level using Xano. Xano is it's a good platform as an integration, because you get a very nice and clean user interface using Webflow and all the user modules, and they have direct integrations with Xano. So it's a pretty nice for small applications. I haven't used Xano for a very large application, but I would say small to mid-size, it's a pretty solid system which we could rely on.
So you basically store all the data in Xano, and then what do you bring it in, and then that data lives in the Webflow CMS? They all have associated.
No. Basically, you can write API for the data that needs to be pulled out from Xano to Webflow. So basically, all the data manipulations, everything is happening in Xano itself, where it's not completely. I wouldn't say it's completely a no code, because you need to know how to write APIs and some JavaScript in order to do that. But still, I would say it's much more easier to manipulate the data, or maybe to work around and publish, than using any high-end database tools like SQL or whatever it is. So so it's basically tables. You are easy to create tables and the connections, the views, everything. It's very easy. But it's but not, I would say, it's a high-end version of using any other no-code system, because using Airtable or maybe software, we are serving a particular niche elements or very limited kind of services. But in Xano, you can create custom things for a much more bigger applications.
So I've got a question. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to take this. I've been opening up a bunch of tabs, and I'm going to create a one tab and then paste it in here. So if anyone wants to see all the other tools we've been talking about, and I'll also have a link to my my chat in here to the presentation if people want to look at those tools. So the question that I have is this: I want the company that I work for is, oh, did I just lose everything? So the company that I work for is getting to the point where we are large enough that people don't know each other anymore. There's 100, there's 200, almost 175 people. So it's just big enough that you might see someone and be like, I don't know their name. So what I was thinking was, we have headshots for everyone. And I was thinking of making a quiz. And the mechanism that I don't totally know yet, but the idea is we'd either show two names. We've got the names of everyone in the company, and we either show two names and then a picture, and you'd choose the name of who's the picture, or you'd show a name and two pictures and you'd be like, who is this? Or you could show a name and a picture and you'd say, is this Kyle Simmons? And then you could say yes or no. So basically a little quiz that people could just like, if they want to like kill some time, they could go in and be like, yeah, like learn name learner or whatever. Right. And so then I was thinking, like, how would I build this using no code tools where I've got all the names, I've got all the pictures, but I need to create some logic, and I can write a little JavaScript, right? And I know how to do that. But I was just thinking, I was curious if anyone had any like, oh, I would probably, cause I want to get I basically want to get random pictures or random names. And I need to make sure that one of them is associated with the other. But so there's going to have to be some sort of a randomness to it. But I was curious if anyone had any ideas for how they might build that using a no code tool or no code tools. And if no one has any ideas, that's also fine, because I haven't come up with any. And I've been thinking about this for weeks.
So this question creation is it based on some algorithm, or how do you want to create it?
I mean, I don't want to take a random picture and random names and then say, is this the same? Is this the right person? Because the chances that it's the correct answer, like if I just take a random name and a random picture, it's always going to be like, it's never going to be correct, if that makes sense. It's like the chance that it randomly takes my name and my picture and is like, is this Kyle? And I'm like, yeah, like that's, so there's got to be some sort of an algorithm in there to keep it random, but also not so random that there's never a match. There's got to be a match of some sort in every question.
So you're thinking it would be like a quiz. So your picture would be up and then they'd choose your name from like a selection of names and then get it right.
Yeah. Maybe there's one, two names, or maybe there's four names or something. And it's like, there's a picture and then there's four options below and you choose the right name.
I feel like that would be very addictive.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. I'll throw it out there that maybe Airtable, and that might be a really fun project to throw past Aaron Kornblit, who's the Airtable guy, and see if he has an idea about how we might do that. Because it's the kind of thing you'd need to write some logic and some scripting with it.
Yep.
But you can do that with Airtable.
Hey, you know what I had advertised recently to me by the Instagram algorithm, who clearly decided that I was having a problem in my marriage? It was this thing, I'm fine, by the way. It was this thing where it gave you and you and your partner both, I thought it was really interesting. You and your partner both downloaded the app, and then it would send you questions, and you would only see the answer. Like if only one person answered, you wouldn't be able to see what it was at the answer. You had to both answer in order to see what other people were writing. So maybe you could make something where if you asked people questions, but like, I don't know, they were like weird questions that paired people up randomly. And then if they both replied, they would see their replies. But if only one person replied, then the other person, I don't know, gets fired.
I'm curious to try this out.
I thought it was a pretty interesting concept.
When I was in a past life, I had a job. I was a solutions architect at a company, and so I'd help people develop their apps. I didn't do the actual code, but I would help them design and think through it and all the stuff. And I worked on an app that was a dating app. And what you would do, and it was an app that was all designed. It was the craziest thing. It was the crazy because I'm in work meetings talking to a guy, and he's like giving examples of like, maybe your partner likes to dress up in furry costumes and that's what they're into. And like, and you're having a legitimate business conversation. Like, okay, so tell me about this furry example that you know, but it's, what you would do is you would go through and you would answer all these questions talking about, and it was all about like your preferences, your like sexual preferences, and then your partner would take the same thing, and then however you answered the same, it would then tell you like, hey, you two both are open to this, or you are open to that. And it's kind of like what you're talking about, like two people take an app, they answer some questions, and then based on if their answers are the same, then they match. It's probably a little bit like Bumble in a sense, where it's like, or these dating apps where it's like, if you both match, if you both like each other, you know, you both swipe right, then you're connected.
Mm.
That's interesting.
I'm gonna think about this Airtable option. I was also wondering about, I don't know if it's possible, but that Wized, I think that's how you pronounce it, Wized, Wized.
Yeah, you can, I think maybe as I was saying, maybe Xano can help you with that, because I was having, it's not a quiz that I built. So if Airtable is able to do, you can depend on Xano also to do it. Xano and Webflow both can fulfill the requirement, I believe, if we are able to come up with an algorithm to pick how to define the choices and the questions.
Mm-hmm.
I think I have to run, guys. So thank you, Kyle, for the amazing presentation.
Yeah.
And I would definitely remember this for a long time. And also just one request. Is it possible to share the presentation or a list of the no-code tools?
If you look in the chat, I posted a little link, and that is going, the very first link on my one tab is the 82 no-code tools in 20 minutes.
Ah, okay.
So
got it.
And we should probably, I
I'm
think,
also going to post the video, so I will let that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Amazing. So thank you, everyone, and hopefully meet you next year. So happy New Year in advance.
Enjoy
Merry
your
Christmas, by the way. Sorry?
Merry Christmas.
Enjoy your breakfast.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what I have to go and make right now. So yeah.
All right, everyone, have a great night. Thank you for coming. This was great. Fun
Thank you,
chat.
Carl.
We'll see you again.
Rachel,
Yeah.
Hamad.
Bye.
I'll email you. Let's connect on LinkedIn as well.
Absolutely.
Definitely, Eric. Definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We should,
Awesome.
get in touch soon. Yeah.
Okay. Good night.
See ya.
Bye.
John.
Hi, Penny.
Bye.
Bye.